All right, Lafayette, Mandala, Bibi Fahuye, it's your favorite warrior, Black Panther in the building. Uh, got my distinguished panel, and I knew y'all knew that this was coming. I knew y'all knew that the Black Panther was gonna go in on the movie Black Panther. So here we are with Brother Asar, Brother Unk, Amara Squad in the building, Mossi Warrior Clan, Spirits is flying, Pseudos is always crying, and they definitely crying about this movie. Um, so, you know, what's going on, Brother Asar?
Peace. Everything and nothing. You know how we do.
Everything
Glad to
and
be
nothing.
here to have this important discussion of a pivotal movie that is critical and inspiring, and not only inspiring in terms of film and cinematography, but the kinds of conversations that it starts, that people are having as a result of issues brought out in this film. So I look forward to the discussion, and we can get it in. I appreciate you allow me to be on your channel to discuss this.
Always, brother. Always. You are always welcome on my channel anytime. What's going on, Brother Unk?
It's good, man. Black African Power, man. I'm a raw squad up, man. Yeah, glad to be here, man. This movie kind of got people spinning every which direction. So I think a good, healthy discussion. As a matter of fact, man, I'm at the Black Dot Bookstore and Culture Center right now, and we actually had a panel discussion on the movie. People came and everybody gave their opinions. It was a very, very healthy discussion. So this too will be a healthy discussion, as long as we keep in mind that your opinion. It's a movie. It's a coming from a comic book, and it's supposed to strike up conversation. You know what I mean? That's what makes the movie so good. It actually strikes up good, healthy conversation. I think the problem is when other people don't allow you to have what you thought you saw. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a healthy discussion, man. All time for it.
Absolutely. And it was delayed because of two reasons. One, I wanted to give everybody a chance to see the movie who was going to see the movie. Secondly, my travels have delayed syncing up with Asar, and I'm currently in Afghanistan right now. Just got here today, so my travels have been all over the place. So that delayed the structure of the movie. I mean, the discussion of the movie. So what I want to get into really quick, because there's a lot of people that this is their first Marvel movie. This is their first introduction into what they call the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe. We want to get into what is Wakanda. Wakanda is a sovereign African nation that exists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where the leader of this African nation's name is the Black Panther. The Black Panther is a title, not a particular person. Uh, Whoever is the leader of the nation is the Black Panther. Wakanda is a nation that was struck by a meteorite from outer space. This meteorite contained a special element called vibranium. Vibranium is the most versatile and toughest substance in the world within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Wakanda is located in East Africa, for those that are confused. They kind of go over this in the movie, but if you haven't seen it, much like Kemet, there were 5 African tribes that came together to build the nation of Wakanda. You have just a little couple of the tribes. You have the Border tribe, you have the Jabari tribe, and all these tribes came together to make Wakanda. So Wakanda is a technological marvel hiding in plain sight. Basically, they make everyone think that they're a third world country, when they're actually the most advanced civilization in the known world within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So We want to get that out the way for people that have never been to a Marvel movie, because those of you that went to the movies know you can always see the people that never been to the Marvel movie because they leave as soon as it's over. And anybody that's been to Marvel movies knows there's always some extra scenes after the movie. So we want to jump right into it, man. Brother Asar seemed to go somewhere. So I want to talk about the importance of myths, because everybody says this is a mythological movie. I don't know why you guys is making a big deal about it. What's the big deal with myths? You know, it's not real. So, Brother Asar, now that you're back, can you go over the importance of myths in African tradition and what they mean?
Yes. Well, myths are tales, stories, aphorisms that are creatively designed to transfer values of a community from one generation to the next via the method of storytelling. And so myths aren't necessarily history in the sense that we would think of history as an academic enterprise in modern times. However, these myths draw on human experiences that allow a certain authenticity that the listener can relate to and draw the lessons from the story. So before writing was the dominant way to transfer information, communities, griots, and just creative persons in general would create these types of stories, and people would learn these stories and be able to refer back to them to find solutions to problems for which they may experience, to draw wisdom from the story so that they can make, you know, better and wiser decisions moving forward in their lives. A brief, you know, example of something, then I'll, you know, pass the mic. I remember some years ago, I was watching I don't know what particular news magazine program it was, but it was something like a Nightline, a 2020, one of those 60 minutes, you know, saying type shows. And there in Southeast Asia, there was a major earthquake. And then, you know, with earthquakes, especially in the sea, tsunamis often usually follow. And so this one was particularly very devastating for, I think it was either in India or just somewhere, you know, closer to like Vietnam in that area. I forgot exactly where it was. But so, you know, some time later, this news magazine went to go interview a particular tribe who existed in this area, whose people were not affected. Now, hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of this tsunami that that came in and devastated the area. So how did this group of people survive, whereas the others, and these were, you wouldn't consider them more sophisticated in the modern sense of that they live you know, fully like in cities and things of that nature. They're still kind of rural. They have they kind of a mix between the two. So they interviewed one of the elders, and one of the elders said that he recalled a myth that his elders used to teach him as a child. And in the myth, a monster from the sea, you know, would eat or drink the water. And when you saw that happening, It was a story telling you that you needed to go to high ground. And so for anyone who knows, when you're on the beach, the water is going to recede first.
Yep.
You know, so where the water comes at the edge of the sea or the beach and whatnot, you're going to find now more beach where you saw a whole bunch of water. When you see that happening, you know that a tsunami is coming. This man in his lifetime never witnessed the tsunami, but he was able to recall the myth about the monster at sea, you know, saying eating and drinking the water on the edge, and knew what to do. He tried to convince, you know, he took a long time trying to convince the younger folks who were there that this is the case and we need to go. Ultimately, they fell out of respect for the elder. They fell through, and you know, they got in line, and everyone moved up to the mountains. It got to the point where, if I remember correctly, some people were trying to sue this group of people for not warning, you know, the rest of the public.
Wow.
You know, and so it was an
Should listen to
interesting
your
story.
myths.
Yeah, so it's saying all of that to say that, you know, it's of course there's no monster, you know, in the sea that's drinking up all the water, but this is because this is a group of people who, you know, don't have writing per se, but they needed a creative way to talk about something that happens in real life and things of that nature. So they put it in myth form, and it is this myth that saved this particular tribe from dying out with the rest of the folks, you know, who weren't in tune with nature in that way. So I'll end there.
I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the drunk. He was living on an island, and he was telling people to get up on high ground, right? And based off of him listening to his ancestral stories, it was basically saying when the water disappears from the beach, right, all the fishermen is to go out to sea. Or, you know what I'm saying, if you're on a boat, go out to sea, right? If you're on land, go to high ground and follow the animals, right? And they ain't listen to him. They said you just a drunk. Luckily, he had this young girl to come with him, right? And so you're absolutely right, man. Like they didn't know scientifically what it was. You know what I'm saying? Just like in the Bible where they talk about the floods, just like amongst the Sumerians, they talk about the flood. They didn't know it was an ice age and then the water levels, you know what I'm saying? Once the ice melt, the water levels will rise again. They didn't know what that was. Yeah, I thought it was a, you know, God destroying them. So that point you make, you know what I mean, is absolutely on point.
Absolutely. So now that we've established the importance of myths, we have to understand that as a community, we celebrate a civilization that is 5,000 to 10,000 years old and riddled with myths. So it's kind of contradictory and hypocritical for a community to come out and say, don't go see a movie because it's mythical. Because a lot of the things that we learn from in ancient Kemet are just that, myths. Heru and Set is a myth. You know, Asar, Set, myths. There are so many myths that we draw inspiration from. So we can't allow that to be an excuse to not support a movie. It just can't happen. Let's go into some of the symbolisms and cultural identifiers in the movie. I think an interesting fact of the movie that people may not know is T'Chaka, Black Panther's father. The character that plays him is actually a native African from the continent, and he's actually from South Africa. So when you see the dialogue between him and T'Challa, he's actually speaking his native language, which is the Xhosa language. So you hear the clicks in the language, and it's an actual African language. So that brought a sort of authenticity to the film that I thought was very key. And you know, Brother Asar, can you give us some more information on the Xhosa language and you know, some information about that?
Yeah, I can't say it correctly because I never could do the clicks, but it's
clicks,
something
man.
more like like it's like Kosa. It's like you kind of say it at the same time. I'm not used to saying it. So
I don't even try. I don't even try. I can't do it.
You know, most folks will just say Kosa language, but it's Kosa, like something like that. But it is a Bantu language, part of the what we call the Nguni family of languages, which also include the Shona, the and the Amazulu, or we should properly say isiZulu language, and we would say Isikosa too. But when the Nguni, and Nguni is a word for cattle, so these were cattle rearing Bantu speakers who came from Central East Africa on down, you know, to modern South Africa. So when they got to modern South Africa, they met up with the so-called, you know, Bushmen and Khoi people. And because they were living side by side and intermarrying, and even to an extent, some was having wars with each other, they have a relationship. And this Bantu language, a few of these Bantu languages, adopted the click sounds into the language. So that's how the clicks got into it, because of the intermarriages and stuff like that. So, you know, a child is going, you know, saying to learn the language of what's in the household. So if you marry a, you know, a Khoisan, you know, a Khoi woman, she's going to be speaking her native language to the child, and the child picks up on it and learns the clicks. But she's also learning Bantu, the, you know, the language of her father. And so, you know, this is how over time this gets into it. But yeah, so in short, it's a Bantu language of the Nguni family that has borrowed heavily from the Khoi languages, especially phonetically in terms of the phonemically in terms of the clicking sounds.
Not only that, brother, but the script they were using in the film, the Nsibiti script. Say it one more time. Nsibiti script. We know that that's being compared to Medu Neter, and the symbols are very ancient. And it's another thing that brought a lot of authenticity to the film, because unless you know what you're looking at, you don't even realize how much research they had to do to put that into the film. Can you talk about that script for a second?
Yes, it's actually a script out of Nigeria. And
I believe the Ekpe spiritual system uses that.
Yeah, most scripts start off as a means to record, you know, divination or spiritual concepts, and then maybe later adapted to a script. And that's the belief even with Medu Neter. I forgot the gentleman's name. He did a PhD dissertation in Cameroon on that very fact for Medu Neter. It's written in French. And so, but yeah, I mean, even to that point, we got to go back to what you were saying. They did a lot of research, and they pulled from various different African cultures and integrated it seemingly, because we got to remember that Wakanda is not a real place. And so they can't draw from Wakanda in Africa and make an authentic. So, you know, Wakanda language and all this other kind of stuff. So they drew from Africa and all around Africa and created and synthesized it to make it an authentic Wakandian, you know, culture. That you know, kind of in the spirit of a Pan-African synthesis. And so, you know, so that's just with Ryan Coogler and everyone involved in terms of the writing. Even some of the people, like I shared a video on Facebook of Bozeman, who plays the Black Panther in the film, that he was, you know, to get prepared for this role, he was reading people like John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Jochanan, you know, and other, you know, saying African philosophers, to get a kind of sense of what does it mean to be king you know, and how I can bring, you know, and just African culture in general, and how I can bring this spirit into the role. So, you know, they put a lot into the people who did the design work, the sister who did the design work for the clothing and stuff like
Sister Ruth,
who drew Wakanda, how they synthesized and made a, you know, like modern looking buildings, but also some traditional, you know, styles. Like when you see Wakanda, you'll see like these patterns that if you go into villages in South Africa, they have these unique shapes that mean something in the society, that especially that the women, because what they don't know is like these houses that you will see in South Africa, the designs are done by the women with these particular shapes. It's their particular script. Like if you have this book, hold on one second.
It's the same way in Nubia, brother. So
yeah. I encourage everyone to get this text here. It's Indaba, My Children by Credo Mutwa. It's just a story of South African Zulu myths. And actually, let me give a matter of fact, this is the same method used to design Wakanda. In essence, it's the same method. Now, this book was same method used by this author, Credo Mutwa, who's a Zulu shaman. He's an initiate in, of course, the Zulu system. However, he traveled all across Central Africa and East Africa and got initiated in those systems. And so he learned a lot of their myths. And so what he did is he combined a lot of the myths from his travels and including his native ones. And some of them he synthesized into central narratives. So these are authentic, you know, African myths from across Central and South Africa, but he synthesized them into this one text. But you learn a lot about Bantu culture and things of this nature. But one of them is the writing script that the Bantus have, the Zulu have a writing script as well. And so those symbols and stuff that you see in the film, you also see, you know, in this text, and that's what you'll see on the wall. So they're writing systems, they're communicating with each other. They're not just designs or whatnot, they're scripts. And so people who were trained to read those scripts, when they go by a house, they can read the messages. And so this is a good book if you want to see some of those designs or whatnot that you see in the film. Again, this book was written like 60, well, published, I should say, in like 64. Yeah, 1964. So I don't know if this was one of his inspirations, but it's one of my inspirations for a film I'm developing. But that's another topic for another day.
absolutely, brother. It's very interesting. Just the amount of research that went into this film. I don't know if anybody noticed, but during the fight scene in the casino, when Okoye is fighting, there's kind of like a high pitched sound. It's kind of yip 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 yip. That's actually native to my indigenous land of Senegal. Senegalese women make that sound in ritual and in ceremony, and I'm not exactly sure what the meaning behind the sound is, but it is definitely a sound that is made during ritual and ceremony in Senegal. And for Kendrick Lamar to capture that in song and them to put that in the film, somebody is doing some serious research to even know what that is. I mean, I was just impressed by the culture. But brother Uncle look like he over there debating somebody.
Your mic is not muted. Your mic is
mic muted,
bro.
So can I jump in right with it real quick?
I was gonna ask you a question, brother.
Ask that quick question, then I know what I want to say. I want y'all to refute it.
Well, hold on, brother. We got see, brother's always trying to mess up the schedule of the show. Goodness gracious. I wanted to ask you. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go.
All right, go ahead.
I was going to ask you how important and what did you think about the women representation in the film? How did you feel that they were represented? Um, and you know, what were your thoughts on that?
You know, we been saying this from day one, man. You can't underestimate women at all in the roles they played in civilization, period. Specifically in the roles they played in African civilization. And we can even speak to it as far as European civilizations. The woman, period. The black woman, man, you know, since eons, man, has always been at the forefront of whatever you think you was doing. I mean, that's just a fact, man. If you out there on the open prairie or on the savannah, man, it gets to the point where whoever can do what they doing the best, do what they do. And so that representation of the strong black woman, you know what I'm saying, was very, very important, man. She was not second. I mean, she developed the technology, but that's exactly what she did in early civilization. You know, she's the first doctor. Most people don't even talk about that, just based off of her close relationship, you know, with the plants. You know what I'm saying? Farming. She was doing gathering things. I mean, so she came up with the first concoctions of medicine and poisons. You know what I'm saying? And then technology to actually access these things. So I thought the movie was excellent. It had the sisters in their rightful place, leading the way with science and technology and the warrior class. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate that. I thought that was a, you know, excellent right there. You know, it put her in the position of power that she's always had. I thought that was great. Can't take that away from the movie at all. What now the comic book's probably something different. Because in the comic book, I think they represented some of the warriors as what? Maybe lesbian. Am I correct in that?
That's a later addition. Originally,
Okay.
no, none of them
Oh,
were.
that's good.
But it's a later book published by
Okay.
a black female that
Oh,
made one of them homosexual, and
gotcha.
it's so funny because people like to bring that up, but
Right. That's why I wanted to bring
nobody nobody in the comic book community likes that edition. So fact they didn't even invite her to the movie premiere.
Mm,
She didn't get
mm.
no invite. So if you see an article going around about a black woman that didn't get invited to the movie premiere, that's why. Because she made the Dora Milaje some lesbians, and people got up in arms about it. I mean, people got to understand the comic book community is very strong. If you change the smallest thing and it don't work, it don't make sense,
Right.
they're gonna execute you. They're gonna execute you on site. That's just
Wow.
what it is. So nobody liked that version that she wrote. So they kind of act like it don't happen because originally none of those women are lesbians. Even so, the Dora Milaje are, first of all, they're modeled after the Dahomean warriors for the
Okay.
Benin Empire. Secondly, they're known as the wives of the king. So all of those women are trained to one day potentially to become wives of the king and to protect them with his life. Even though he don't need much protecting, they're essentially the army. Uh, so no, there's no lesbianism in the original Dora Milaje. That was a one series run by a sister, and it didn't work out, so they scrapped the whole project.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you actually said that. That clears up a lot, and it really speaks to the makers of the movie because based
Mhm.
off what you said, they had a choice, and they made the right choice in that. Like that was because he could have played that card, and I'm really appreciate see that.
Absolutely, he could have played that card. And there was even a scene that they were trying to promote as was going to be a lesbian scene, but
Mm,
the dialogue in the scene was two Dora Milaje women saying that the other one looked good in their uniform. And, you
mm.
know, the LGBT community ran with it and was like, oh, it's a homosexual scene, great. But they end up not putting that scene in the movie. So now they're upset, but it was never meant to be an LGBT scene. It was
Right, I
just a
got
scene about the Dora Milaje. But you know how things get misconstrued.
you. Facts.
And one of the things I wanted to point out, if going back to that Vegas, I mean not Vegas, but the casino scene. If you look at the colors that Okoye, Lupita's character, and T'Challa had on, they had on red, black, and green. And that was something I didn't notice until the second time I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about, you know, subliminal messages are all through the film. I mean, Shuri with his Nigerian garbs on. Uh, the Dora Milaje also resembles the Mbele tribe from South Africa. as well as the Dahomean warriors. Um, Killmonger's mask is actually Igbo. It's an Igbo mask, and the mask means time of the brave, as well as his tattoos are from the Mercy tribe. You'll also see the plated lips from one of the elders. That's a Mercy plate that from their tribe. They put that in there. The Adinkra symbol that his sister Shuri had on, it's called the Wawa Aba, and I believe it means it's like the seed of the Wawa tree, but it symbolizes like hardness. Angela Bassett, her headdress is from the Zulu tribe. So it was so many cultural like motifs that, man, if you just didn't know, the border tribe with their blue cloaks, I think it's the Bosotha, Lesto, those people, those are actual cloaks that they wear, and they are said to have, border protecting powers. Like, who I have to tip my hat to Ryan Coogler, because he went to live in South Africa for an extended period of time to study to make this film, and he did an excellent job. He did an excellent job, even down to the relationships in the film. Because if you notice, Koye and the brother from the Get Out that was in the border tribe, they were not in the same tribe, right?
Right.
That's African tradition. You will rarely see people marry from the same tribe. They will marry from the opposite tribes. So he even got that down. Like, I really can't stress enough the cultural significance of this film, especially when they became the Black Panther, because that's an initiation. So in all initiations of African spirituality, it's common. You have to go to your ancestors. So this is why you see them burying them and them going to the ancestor realm, or what we would call the Ikole Orun and Ifa, and talking with his ancestors about his upcoming venture. And what's very significant about that is, if you notice with Killmonger, when he went to the ancestor realm, where was his father at? His father wasn't at the ancestor realm. His father was in the same apartment. Now people wonder why. Why wasn't his father in the ancestor realm? Because if you listen, Black Panther said his father never got a proper burial. If you don't get a proper burial in ancestral tradition, you don't go to the ancestor realm. You're stuck. That is the African's version of hell. To wander around aimlessly and can't reach your ancestors. So this is why he had to go back to the apartment. He couldn't go to where all the other ancestors were. And they even captured that. So, I mean, I could go on and on about the cultural significance of the film. And I think a lot of people missed it because we're not immersed in our African tradition. So we don't really know what we're looking at if you're not involved in African spirituality. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I was really impressed. Somebody did a lot of research.
It forced you to study. So, okay, so based off that, right, if you understood African traditions, right, if you didn't understand African traditions, I mean, traditions and customs, then your focus would have been on the African Americans. We can agree to that, right?
Say it one more time, brother. You
If,
kind of cut out.
if
Say it
you
again.
wasn't accustomed to African custom and traditions, right? Didn't know that. You didn't even know the Marcus Garvey colors, right? Which is African American traditions, right? You basically, the best thing you had to do was to kind of like, like use your African Americanness to kind of interpret the movie. Am I correct in that? Not your conscious, because conscious you're gonna talk about Marcus Garvey. You know what I'm saying? But say you just was a person who's African American and you was looking at this. So I want to say this. One thing for sure, two things for certain. What we do understand is most people understand what the CIA is, right? And based off of the CIA and their relationships with other countries, other nations, like Bin Laden, right? CIA had a relationship with him, all good weapons. Saddam Hussein, all good. But it's always at a certain point that the CIA seemingly switches up based off the environment of that particular moment. They switch up on you. So me personally, seeing that they had the CIA agent real close to them, right? At some point, that relationship's going to change. So I felt like they probably should have took the Mossi stance and not having them around them that close like that. That's just my thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I know how the CIA works. In there today, love you, then tomorrow they trying to kill you and destroy you. I seen that. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of took offense to them saving the CIA guy. You know what I mean? I just took offense to it just based off my understanding of the working relationship the CIA has around the world with different nations. That's the part I seen with my eyes.
I get that, but this is where from a comic book standpoint, their hands are tied because Everett Ross is not just some guy that they got for the movie. Everett Ross is an actual character in the comics, and Everett Ross is like the Wakandan expert at the government. Everett Ross is the guy that eventually tells the other nations that no, Wakanda is not a third world country. Wakandan is a world power, and we need to respect them. So Everett Ross becomes the government Wakandan expert, and being that they had not inserted him in previous movies into Wakanda so he could fulfill that role, they had to let him live in this movie because he can't fulfill his purpose if he never goes to Wakanda or never knows anything about Wakanda. So that's basically what it was.
But you also have to keep in mind as well that, you know, African culture and custom is also at play in the film. And I'll give an example from Dr. Malidoma Somé in his book of Water and the Spirit, for anyone who's familiar with that text. In that in that book, he talks about his grandfather, who was a powerful elder and shaman in Burkina Faso, where Malidoma Somé grew up. And he had a particular technology that allowed him to kill targets from a distance without being within the vicinity. Right? That uses some kind of crazy, it seems science fiction. And I won't debate whether it exists or not. I'm just being the messenger here. So his elder, and this is not a fiction book. This is a man talking about his initiation and his homeland and the culture of his people who lives in Burkina Faso, the Dagara people, who are related to the Dogon and the Akan folks in Ghana. So before the borders, you know, Akan, Burkina Faso, Mali, all of that.
Eventually the Mossi too.
Yes. So he talks about how his grandfather used this technology to fight the French when they first came into the area. And so because the French soldiers had infiltrated Burkina Faso, you know, he was using the technology in which he had. However, the military stopped, and then the missionaries came in, and they were providing food, clothing, and shelter, you know, saying to the people. And so they had a customary law that they can't fight and kill and destroy people who are helping. And I see the same thing in the Black Panther film. So Ross, the character, he's not being helped for no reason. He's being helped because he sacrificed his life to save Nakia's. So he jumped in front of a bullet for Nakia, and as a reward for saving one of their own and risking their life, they in fact, you know, saved his. And so, you know, that's a totally different, you know, mindset. Matter of fact, it's stuff like that happened in real life. So the only reason we have, for example, this text here, pale fox, The only reason we have this text is because Marcel
White boy.
Griole actually fought the French on behalf of the Dogon. He sacrificed his life. He killed on behalf of the Dogon for the French army who was trying to invade. And as a result of that, then they started to give him some knowledge, some information. He had already been getting information for the longest, but Marcel Griole was also a military person, and they knew this. And so it was his military training. After he got to know the Dogon, they was like, no, you can't come and invade these people. And he was killing his fellow countrymen on behalf of the Dogon. And so when they saw that he sacrificed his life, in defense of theirs, that's when they started giving him some of the deeper information that he'd been seeking all this time. It took him damn near 20 years, to get this information. And so this is why he gets information, and all the other white folks who came after him, who tried to get information on the Dogon, were unsuccessful. They got surface stuff. But he proved himself by sacrificing his life in defending the people, and this is why he was able to get this information. And so I see it kind of in the same way when we see Ross again. He sacrificed his life and was fighting on behalf of Nakia and Wakanda, and this is why they had to return the favor in this sense. And so I think it's a little bit more complicated than what a lot of people are assuming.
And also, brother, think about the life that he saved.
Yeah,
he saved his love's life, so he felt like he owed him.
Yeah.
All right. So can we agree that our history, the history of the world, is full of these people that are actually sacrificed their lives for certain tribes, but at the end of the day, the government that they are attached to always usurp them and find a way to use that against them, and that's an interesting dynamic too. And so that's why I always say the Mossi, they was like, man, we don't care what you do. Having you around will draw us attention. That's why I love the Mossi so much. They
ain't coming in here playing.
Yeah, even if he did sacrifice his life, which he did, and we know the Underground Railroad wouldn't even happen. You know what I'm saying? Without certain people, because then you'd be a whole bunch of black people standing outside, ready to get stuff. You know what I'm saying? So we do have a history of people helping us out, no matter what. You know what I mean? That transcend racial lines, right? But it's always the other side that will use that relationship and usurp their authority. You know what I'm saying? So, man, it's like once you get to know a person, you realize they wasn't as bad as what everybody else was saying. And so you develop friendships. You know what I'm saying? And you want to help these people. But it's your crazy government who has not taken the time to build a certain relationship that will always usurp your authority. And you standing looking crazy.
I think that theme was explored in because people don't know that there was a cartoon, a BT series that premiered some years ago that
actually happened.
That
actually happened.
Of that series. And so, at least within the Black Panther universe, those things were explored. So remember that the original film for Black Panther is 4 hours long. They had to cut a lot out. So I don't know what saying they cut what type of dialogues and all of that. And then remember that another thing that people got to remember again, that this isn't a film, that exists on its own. It's interwoven in a series of films and films that are coming. So they gotta weave certain ideas in that fit with the films from the past and then what's coming. So the next film that's being released in April, of course, is the Avengers Infinity Wars. And so a lot of what we're seeing starting from the first Iron Man, to Black Panther is going to coalesce, nonetheless in this Infinity Wars, film. So that has to keep in mind. So how do we introduce this? Because if you see the Infinity War trailer, you see everyone is running towards the monsters that come, you know, with the alien invasion. But in the background, you see Wakanda. And so if you see one of the earlier films, the Age of Ultron, you see Claw with the other Africans who stole the vibranium, you know, giving it to them. Like, they keep giving you these clues that Wakanda is going to be significant, you know what I'm saying, in this whole universe, you know, so to speak. So we got to keep that in mind as well. And so now, if it was an independent film on its own, and you know, it wasn't in this universe, a lot of these issues that a lot of people are saying would be relevant, because that would be something that I would explore as a writer. You know, how do we, you know, because again, as I stated in the beginning, myths encode values that we want to pass on to future generations, and we put it in a creative way that they'll remember it. So for us who study Black history, we know you can't trust white folks regardless. So how do we put this in the myth, you know, to let them know, you know, hey, I don't care what he do, you know what I'm saying? These folks cannot be trusted, you know, and so we would have to explore that, you know, in a very unique way.
Right. And you exactly correct, both of you brothers. And somebody mentioned the cartoon series that was on BET a while ago. In the cartoon series, it's a totally different narrative. Everett Ross is informing the CIA on how to invade indirectly Wakanda. And basically, T'Challa catches them and says, if you don't leave my borders within 24 hours, I will consider it an act of war. Basically what he told him. So, but that's a standalone film, and they didn't have to weave that into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's the real point, brother Asar. I want to inform the viewers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But before you do that, let me inform the viewers something, because it came up. Why is M'Baku's name different in the movie? M'Baku's name is different in the movie because his name in the comics is Man-Ape. And they didn't want to offend a bunch of Black folks. They didn't want to offend a bunch of Black folks by calling him Man-Ape in the film. You gotta look at the marketing. This film came out in February, Black History Month. It's a Black film, majority Black cast. They did not want to mess up the money, so they changed his name to M'Baku. So people are looking for M'Baku in the comics and not finding him. And they're like, well, what's up with M'Baku? Is he a made-up character? No, M'Baku's real. He's just known as Man-Ape, and he is of the Man-Ape tribe. If you look at his dress in the movie, you will see the ape stuff on him. They just renamed it Gorilla in the movie to not offend people. So, you know, they're trying to be sensitive.
Unlike H&M, who put the young boy in and so, you know.
And to clarify, M'Baku is in the comics, just the name he goes by is Man-Ape. He doesn't go by M'Baku.
I like that tribe though, man. It just shows again, you know, how Africans look at other animals and mimic their behaviors, man, for being successful. Because like nature, most people only recognize that nature is really the only place you can learn from. You know what I'm saying? Learn how to hunt. You know, you watch your surroundings around you to recognize how to hunt. Where should you be at when you're hunting something? I mean, should you be upwind or downwind? Man, this comes off just observing nature. Basically, you know what I'm saying? That's where you learn from. So I don't think we ever had a problem with monkeys, gorillas, giraffes. We never had that problem, man. Never. Because we knew that was the place of learning.
Another thing we have to keep in mind, I just want to raise the name of this author, Dr. Kipkuich Arap Sambu. And he has written texts. He's from the Collagen people of East Africa. Now, they have an oral tradition that they came from ancient Kemet. And due to invasions and some other issues that happened in the Delta region, they were a military clan in Africa. And so he has written some text to provide evidence for their oral tradition. And so, but one of the things that he talks about in his text, I think I have the other text in it. This is the linguistic book, but he has the first text that he wrote. It goes into more of the detail of the collagen culture. And he talks about totems and how they're, you know, like a lot of people look at totems as something more than what they are. And so what he was saying is that the totems, the animals or whatever that we use, are mainly just identifiers, in the same way that, like, if you go to the football league, you know, the Carolina Panthers, you know, their totem, their logo, whatnot, is going to be different than the Atlanta Falcons, you know, or what other group that they use, or the Chicago Bears, you know. Is the totem has it has a characteristic that the particular ethnic group deems as valuable, but you know, it's not to be taken as that they, you know, see themselves necessarily as that animal. It's just a totem. And so, you know, you find that all across Africa, that they just identify and distinguish themselves, you know, between, you know, elements of nature. You have some people whose totem is the sun or a river, you know what I'm saying, or an ant or something like this. But there's something characteristic about that symbol that they identify with, and that just becomes the symbol of the people themselves. And so that has to be kept in mind in terms of African culture and tradition.
Absolutely, bro.
So, how about
Let's
the
get to
economic?
the. Oh, go ahead, bro.
The economic piece. Look at it. The movie close to what 700 million at this point. Like I said, we did a round table in the store. So wouldn't this be a great mechanism of raising monies to help change our dynamics in North America? You know what I'm saying? To have a movie, you know what I'm saying, that is invested by us, controlled by us, and get a chance to distribute some of the monies, you know what I'm saying? To kind of help change our dynamics, because we're fighting a social economic battle around here, man. It's cultural and it's social economics, man. And you need money. And so this money is grossing a lot of money. A lot of money. Yeah, we got some sales in dashikis. The shoe sales went up a little bit at times, right? But I like to see us moving forward, recognizing that this is a great time to be in North America as an African American, as an African. You know what I'm saying? It's a great time, because now we see we really like movies with all of us in that. So I think we need to jump on that. We really need to economically look at this. Really need to look at.
There are several factors that we have to keep in mind in terms of the Black Panther film. One, the Black Panther character has been an ongoing character since the 1960s, 1966 to be exact. So it has had time. Hey, Sister Naya.
Naya, voice on fire.
What's going on, sis?
Peace.
The Black Panther character has had time to accumulate a fan base. So the interest in Black Panther has been proven over time. Secondly, the film itself cost around 200 million to make, and things of that nature. And so, you know, that's a lot of capital to raise and to risk, you know, saying on the film. And so, you know, we would have to create something that, again, that the people can rally behind. And so how do we, you know, prove that and demonstrate that, you know, saying over the years? And so But that's something I feel that we need. We need something that is funded by us, but it also has to first and foremost be a great story. Because if it's not first and foremost a great story, no matter how much money you put behind it, it is going to flop. And there's plenty of examples of films that didn't cost a ridiculous amount of money to make. For example, the Gods of Egypt, but were a flop at the movie theater because it just didn't have a certain something to appeal to the people. And so
You know
we
what that
also
certain
got,
something was, Asar.
I'm just saying in general, that film in
You know what
particular,
it
it
was.
was just,
If the Gods of Egypt would have been black, we'd have
man,
been out there.
first
would have
of
been out
all,
there.
I think they would have killed it more. See, that's what we need next. We need a Gods of Egypt type film that is authentically Egyptian, ancient Egyptian and black, with that type of money. And so, but remember, the Black Panther doesn't come out of nowhere. Films
Right.
before it have been kind of setting things up. So the success of Blade, the success of like Meteor Man, not Meteor Man, Hancock, the success of Hancock, films like Red Tails, you know, and Get Out and stuff like this is they were seeing that, okay, we can do these boxes. So now is the time that we can do, because remember that Wesley Snipes been trying to get Black Panther done since the 90s. And when they would get to a point, either the technology wasn't ready or the funding wasn't there or something always happened. They didn't think, you know, that we were ready for that type of all black, you know, saying cast. And so, you know, it's just on time, just with the casting, with the technology that is available to bring forth a Wakanda in the suit and all of that other kind of stuff. It's just, you know, as the church folks would say, in God's time, you know. And I think now, you know, this time, since we have the technology, we have the networks to make this stuff happen, we have the creative minds, it's time that we put our money where our mouth is and do that type of investing, you know, from every single aspect of the filmmaking process.
Absolutely, brother. And like you said, it's just on time. And I have to give major respect to Chadwick Boseman, because Chadwick Boseman has taken on some great roles. I mean, from James Brown to Jackie Robinson. I mean, he's taken on some really cultural, ethnic roles. And he did something for the film that we've been asking people to do in the community going on almost 10 years. He went to AfricanAncestry.com. I don't know if he saw our broadcast with Rick Kittles or not, but he went to AfricanAncestry.com, got his DNA test, and studied that people. I believe they said he was from Sierra Leone, but he said he studied that and incorporated the motifs from that culture into the film. So I got to give the man major respect for that.
Not to cut you off, but just a quick point. You know what's ironic about that? If he's from Sierra Leone, there's a Wakanda in Sierra Leone.
There is.
Yeah.
There is, which is, you know, as our brothers in the tradition would say, that's the ancestors' work. You know, the church people say it's God's time. African people say the ancestors is working. Whatever it is, I'm glad it came together. It came together great. Sister Nine, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank you guys for allowing me to come on this platform, because, you know, I've been so pumped up about the Black Panther, because I think that just the psychological aspects of the movie and how they depicted Black people, Black men, Black women, Africa. I think that that was important to the psyche of our children. I know sometimes in this community, we focus on adult learning and the importance of adult learning and education. But in America, half of us are under 18. So we have a community of about 50 million people, and half of us are under the age of 18. So we have to learn to adapt our narrative and our messages to both ignite the spirit of Black people and Black children, because that's what African psychology is. It's igniting the spirit of who we are as Black people. And I think that this movie, and the spirit of Ryan Coogler, who he's from the West Coast like me, he's from California, he really did an excellent job of creating a narrative for Black people that we can really adapt to, or we can really how is that, associate with? I don't know if that's the correct word, but yes, I really thought it was a great movie. I thank you guys for having me on the platform. I was looking forward to hearing what you and Asar had to say about like the culture and the African spiritual systems, and possibly fight a little bit with Unc about his analysis. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, you know how we do. We always gotta, take the time with it, make sure it's right. Give people a chance to see the movie, because a lot of people, didn't see it when it first came out. But we let people catch up. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the film, the topic that's on every social media platform right now, the memes, everybody is going in. Killmonger versus T'Challa. Who's right? Who's wrong? Black supremacy versus, African traditional culture. Were they Pan-Africans? It's a lot to cover. And I thank Ryan Coogler for this interesting dynamic, because in all my years of reading Black Panther comic books, I never thought about where was Black Panther during slavery. Never occurred to me, because you just kind of figure that slavery doesn't exist in the MCU. But in recollecting, there are comic books where Black Panther fights Klan members. So it had to exist. So where were you during this period? So it's a very interesting dynamic. And I was glad that it was brought to the forefront, because it does speak to an issue within the diaspora, within the continent, within your neighborhood, and that is tribalism. I don't mess with them brothers from the 3rd Street, because the 3rd Street gangsters ain't doing this. And I don't mess with them Moors, and I don't mess with them Hebrews. I don't want to work with them, and all that. It speaks to that problem. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Somebody want to touch on that?
I guess I'll go. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that they brought in the film. And I think that a lot of the critique is misinformed from the fact that, well, we understand, us who study this, what the implications are for the question that you asked. But as a writer, how do I lead up to possibly that ultimate Pan-African conclusion? There has to be somewhere where the realization is made. And I think that's what they did in the film. And so Black Panther needed a Killmonger to kind of rush or make more palpable that ultimate issue. Now, Nakia already had brought up the issue at the beginning of the film, but she thought about, her solution was more diplomatic and actually more in alignment with what I think the actual Black Panthers had in mind. given my knowledge of Black Panther, the Black Panther Party history, and how the solution that they had in mind. And ultimately, while people may not realize this, you know, everything like Coogler's genius in this, in starting the film basically in Oakland, and aligning, you know, through different symbolisms, and invoking the Black Panther Party and its ideals, even without necessarily referencing the Black Panther Party by name. You know, the fact that it's in Oakland and the issues that they were dealing with, you know what I'm saying, there, and then coming back, implementing a program at the end of the film, like the Black Panthers, you know what I'm saying, do, just updating it with STEM. So if Black Panthers in the 1960s and 70s would have, you know, STEM as an agenda, you know, more than likely they would have, you know, implemented that as well. And so, you know, we got to look at this also from the storytelling aspect. How do we lead to the character or the people in general in Wakanda, possibly, you know, moving forward along those lines? But also I want to interject is that if we was to assume that this was a real life situation, how do we know? Now, you and I know this, and I'm talking to brother Black Panther, brother Ben, right now, that in traditional indigenous rural village life, y'all don't move until ancestors say move. And so how do we know that some divinations weren't done and the ancestors said, not yet, it's not time? And I noticed, like, there's a brother, like I mentioned, Crady Mutwa earlier, right? There's a brother who lives in the East Coast from Africa. He has written, let me see if I can find the book. I can't see it immediately now.
I've been telling you to get a filing system.
Huh?
I've been telling you to get a filing system with these books.
It's over here. I know it's over here.
Oh, I just don't want to waste time looking for it. Just to point it and be like, hey. But his name is Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu. And he's an initiate in several traditions. And he also studied under Credo Mutwa for 10 years. I've been trying to get this brother to do interviews. So people know that I have my own channel. And I bring, you know, people from the continent to the forefront and to the imaginations of those of us here in America. So I have a relationship with this brother. You know, I know he's authentic, genuine, and he has some insights on things that you just haven't heard. But every single time I ask for him to do an interview, I got to consult with my ancestors. If they say no, it's a
they
no.
say no. I can't argue with that. It's like, I'm thinking in my head, bruh, you don't understand. African Americans,
like, you don't understand.
need you and this information. I'm trying to introduce you and the information that you have to my people. He's like, if the ancestors say it's not time, I don't move. He does divination for everything.
Or Yeku.
So while we may think it's magic and we don't have the eyes of the ancestors, you know, that a Black Panther and that civilization didn't step in, you know, and I know this is all hypothetical. Hypothetically speaking, you know, we could also, you know, imagine that this was to happen and that they were to reveal themselves in time when they grew enough in terms of the army, when the technology was right and stuff to this nature, because they could have exposed themselves to other problems if they did not have certain things developed by the time, you know, of you know, because, you know, when we think about it like this, you know, we don't know, like during the time of slavery, if they had vibranium nuclear weapons. They probably wouldn't have been thinking along those lines, you know, saying to have them. And so to expose themselves when a whole bunch of other folks has cannons and tanks and all of this other kind of stuff before they can develop themselves in along that fashion to combat those weapons would have set up a larger disaster, you know. And I think that is explored in the film in the reverse.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people were. I'm not saying Killmonger did not have a point because he had some great ideas. He just went about it in a really messed up way. But people are looking at the foreground. They always teach you when you shoot the background. Look at the background of what you shoot because the bullet can go through somebody and hit another person. And that's how I compare him and his idea to sending these weapons all over the world and trying to empower their agents in different places. Because once you start that, that's a snowball you have no control over. What if the weapons get intercepted? What if these people, you know, and he mentioned this, some people that didn't identify with his mission, what if they start fighting each other? I mean, it's too many variables. Although I applaud his empowering Black people worldwide premise, it wasn't going to work. You have to also look at it from the perspective of the movie. Where the hell was the Avengers going to be when you try to take over the whole world?
Exactly.
Where was Hulk, Thor, Iron Man? These people wouldn't just go stick to the side. Shield is watching you. I mean, it wasn't going to go the way you think it was going to go, brother. I like his message. I like what he brought to the table. But you can't kill black women and choke elders and spit on tradition just to get what you want. You can't. But to your point, Asar, Killmonger, because everybody thinks Killmonger represents African Americans, right? And he does to a certain extent. He also represents Africans because the way he handled what happened is African to the core. Because if people don't know, when Africans lose elections, it ain't just get out of office. Africans perform coups. They take over. That's what they go. Robert Mugabe, Yahya Jammeh, Nelson Mandela. All of these people just rise up and say, you know what? The hell with your reign. We gonna do it my way. And that's exactly what Killmonger did. So he represents both dynamics of the African and the African American, as well as T'Challa does, because as traditional as T'Challa was, he's also diplomatic like African Americans. African Americans ain't performing no coups
at all. And I've said that before, that actually, if we wanted to be serious, we could also see this in the reverse in terms of Killmonger being representing Africans in general, and T'Challa representing, you know, African Americans in general, because the way that he approached it, as I said, if you know about the Black Panther Party, what he did at the end is African American in terms of the diplomatic, but what Killmonger did is very African. That's what Africans do, but this is why it's dangerous, because we have a gang of coups, but no people. I just wanted to read something real quick. This is a quote from Thomas Sankara, you know, who was
Mossi.
You know,
honorary Mossi. He comes much later, but we still, you know,
now
he's still Burkina Faso.
He's Burkina. He's the one who renamed the Burkina Faso, you know, from Oprah Volta. And so he says a soldier without any political or ideological training is a potential criminal. And I think that perfectly represents the issue with Killmonger and just Africans in general who raise it. They have possibly legitimate beefs, but because they have no ideological and political training, their solution, they just get angry and want to take over by force but then they become the new dictators and they don't know how to implement programs or how to deal with people. And the cycle continues. And so this is why Killmonger is ultimately dangerous, because he wouldn't have changed anything. Matter of fact, it's the actions of Killmonger that caused the slave trade and all those things to happen in the first place, that caused the dissension between groups. Because now what did he do? He came into Wakanda, and now the communities are split. Now they're fighting each other, you know, over somebody who came from the outside and interrupted what they initially had as a peaceful, harmonizing, you know, community of folks. So now they're fighting. In Wakanda, in the film, they're not fighting anyone else outside. They're fighting each other. And this is
Border
exactly
tribe versus Dora Milaje.
And so now it becomes well, I don't like these folks, and if somebody wants to come buy them as slaves, so be it. Get rid of them. This is exactly what happened in Africa. And so
and to your point, not to cut you off, but to your point, when he asked for M'Baku's army, what did M'Baku say? He said, "You're the first king to come here in 20 years, and now you talking about unity."
Exactly.
And that just speaks to your point.
Right, and also
divided so much. Go ahead, sister.
And also to speak to Asar's point, look at Liberia and what happened. African Americans went into Liberia and started to rule in Liberia. They still had those attitudes of a Killmonger. They wanted to rule, but they really didn't have the discipline and the knowledge in order to kind of bring the two communities together. So as a result, the country broke out in war, and it still hasn't even rebounded from then. So it goes to show that as African Americans, we have to have the discipline and the knowledge of African culture before going into Africa with our negative attitudes and behaviors, because it can be ultimately very disruptive to the process.
Oh yeah, you can't come, man. Okay, you gonna come to some place that's been doing this 2,000, 3,000, whatever 1,000 years, and you gonna tell them whatever they doing is wrong, and you need to go this way. It's gonna cause mass dissension. It's gonna cause mass panic. It's gonna cause people to divide. Come on,
Yeah, that's not right. Yeah, that's a new one. Okay.
Are y'all demonizing Killmonger? I know I'm not hearing this because I'm starting to feel a little certain way.
You wasn't even listening.
Well, I heard Asar demonize Killmonger. It was this behavior on why I heard him.
Ain't nobody demonizing Killmonger. He has some great ideas. He just went about it in a really fucked up way.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, like as a strategist, as a computer scientist, as a chess player, you know, you always got to think about the unintended consequences of your actions.
Okay.
While you may be motivated by genuine concerns, you may do something with all the good intentions and purpose, but cause something in another area because you weren't forward thinking and didn't think that this was connected to this. And so you doing something over here, that's why it's kind of hard to really do medicine, because while you're trying to cure a headache, you may cause nausea and internal bleeding somewhere else with the medicine. And so you have to be cognizant of all the moving parts. And before you implement a strategy in order to heal. And so we can tell there's a critique on Killmonger himself, but right now we're just critiquing the strategy, that he implemented it, or that he tried to implement. We're looking at the bigger picture. We're looking at all the moving parts. We're looking at the chessboard and say, we're going to get checkmated over here if he moves this piece here. And so that's all it is. It's not to demonize him per se. His lack of understanding, we can understand for his reasoning for why he did what he did and how he did it. You know, we're just trying to point out why ultimately he was going to fail and how history repeats itself.
And speaking to that, Asar, that's why the actions of T'Challa's father was so key for the movie, and it was so key for the Killmonger's character, because he started the snowball by not taking him back to Wakanda and raising him in the traditional system and leaving him to fend for himself. By him not taking him home, he bred the anger and the rage that, you know, festered inside of Killmonger. So, like you just said, you cure the cold, and then the internal bleeding comes. So his father thought he was doing the right thing by doing what he did to his brother and leaving the child. But look what it festered.
But my question is this also. Where is the mother in this story? There's no implication that he was left to fend for himself. He left him with his mother. And so
we don't talk about it.
It's not being talked about. And also we got to understand that it's not as dry, it's not as cut and dry. Remember that Killmonger's father is a traitor. He colluded with Claw to steal vibranium for whatever reason his logic and reasoning was. And as a result, remember those unintended consequences? And remember, we started off the conversation talking about don't trust white folks. So Claw comes in, kills off a gang of Wakandans, including the brother's parents who sided with the brother who sided with Killmonger when he came into Wakanda, not realizing that it is because of his father that his parents are dead. So you team up with the white man to invade and steal resources from your country, so he can, you knowing that he's going to utilize this for war and wage war on people, and he waged war. That's an act of war. He enacted an act of war on your people. So as a king who is charged with protecting his people, what is he supposed to do? And not only that, he was going to bring the brother to trial in Wakanda. He was going to be alive. That brother pulled the gun on his fellow Wakandan brother and was about to kill him. So his father had to handle shop. You know, he had to do what he had to do. That's why I think one of the important lines in the film that people don't get is that when T'Challa went to the ancestral realm, the Duat, to go visit his father, he said, "You're a good man." T'Chaka tells T'Challa, "You're a good man, but it's hard for a good man to be king." And this is why in ancient Kemet, you see the king being adorned on one side with Set and on the other side with Heru. Because sometimes you need to be diplomatic, you need to be Heru. But other times you need to have that Ogun spirit on the other side, you know, that need to nip things in the bud and do things that aren't pretty. And so they're telling you what it means to be king. Being king doesn't mean you just sit there and you order people to fan you and bathe you royally like in Zamunda and all this other kind of stuff. That's not what kingship is. Kingship is about making those difficult decisions where there is no good outcome for everybody in the scenario, but you got to do what's best. So it's like one of those situations where you have a situation where somebody is holding your wife hostage, right? And if you don't give up this money, we're going to, saying kill your wife, and how should I say? No, it's an either or. We're going to kill your wife, but save the rest of Black America, because we have nuclear bombs set up at all the Boys and Girls Clubs and all the Timmy Chans and Chicken Shacks and all the clubs, at Sodnetta's Corner. We got nuclear bombs everywhere. All we have to do is take one sacrifice. Is your wife, Ben. Do you give up your wife to save all of the other African Americans, here? You see, it's a tough decision. There is no everyone wins in a situation like that. You know, and that's what leaders of countries see. Killmonger had an individual gripe. T'Chaka has a thousands of possibly millions of people to consider. That's why when T'Challa's like, I'm not the king of the world, I am king of Wakanda. Because I can't dictate what goes on in everybody else's community. That's the white man's thinking. Like, people don't understand that Killmonger has a European mindset.
But he got all his education from European institutions.
MIT, but didn't take one African American studies course at all. Because he would have known this stuff already if he would have taken it. There was no African American studies department in all of Wakanda, in all of MIT, in the universe. There is not one African American studies course. That would have changed the whole field. Had there been a
segueing into that. Segueing into that, Asar. Let's discuss how Killmonger, well, neither Killmonger nor T'Challa are Pan-African. Neither one of them are Pan-African. And people are looking at me like, how are they not Pan-African? Because even though Killmonger wanted unity, a goal of Pan-Africanism is to build with your people, whether in the diaspora or in the continent. He was not about building at all. He was about destroying all of the spies that they had in these other nations. None of them were in African nations. He wasn't interested in other African nations. And that's T'Challa nor Killmonger. Wakanda isolates themselves from the rest of Africa. Killmonger wanted to attack the rest of the European powers. Nobody was focused on building Africa or the Caribbean or the St. Croix. Nowhere were black folks at. They weren't interested in that. So under that exhibit of a mission statement, neither one of these dudes was really Pan-Africans. So that goes back to Asar's point of, if they would have had a Pan-African studies program, it would have changed the whole outcome of the movie.
I go to Black more time, so I'm just trying to give other people time to speak. So I'm mute my mic.
Okay, anybody else want to go in?
Man, look, Killmonger, man, he did what he had to do, because all we can agree at the end of the day was he got results. He did.
What results
might not
were
like the
those,
way he did it. Huh?
What results were those, on? He got himself killed.
Yeah, but he was a willing sacrifice. He was a Christ figure.
What did he sacrifice for? What did he accomplish?
Well, the accomplished was, for the first time, you seen a spaceship in Oakland. Talking about opening up programs. He did. If he hadn't did what he did, that never was going down like that. That's what I've seen.
Not necessarily. Remember, at the beginning of the film, Nakia was also in negotiations to make certain of those things happen. And so, have you seen? Dang it, what was this film called? It was an Asian film. I'm gonna find the film, I'm gonna come back to it, because it's perfect in that theme. The Asians already explored this in a martial arts film. Let me find it. Y'all continue.
Yeah, and also, I don't know if this is off topic, but in the end of the movie, Nakia, she was the man, the white man at the end. That was the man who killed Iron Man's father in the previous movie. So he's in Africa now, in Rwanda. So kind of like, she's there, she's a doctor, but he killed Iron Man's father, that one man, the white man at the end. Did you see it, Black Panther?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up before I forget. Now, that is the Winter Soldier, Captain America's best friend. The one that killed Iron Man's parents because he was paid to do so and trained to do so by the Nazis. But what they called him is what's important. they called him White Wolf. And for a minute, I couldn't understand why. But White Wolf is actually a character in the comics. And to give you a little background about who White Wolf is, White Wolf is a guy that T'Chaka brings in as an illegitimate son. And he grows up sort of as an outcast of Wakanda. And, you know, he tries his best to impress T'Chaka to be the king. But T'Challa is chosen to be the king, not him. So it's a jealousy thing that goes on with White Wolf. And he goes on to create a secondary military unit of in Wakanda that's next to the Dora Milaje. And they are called the Hutat Zar. It translates to dogs of war. And they wear white Black Panther outfits. And eventually, he surfaces when T'Challa declares war on the United States later in the comics. But they have a battle and he defeats them. So I was interested that they went that way, because what that tells me is for the next movie, Winter Soldier is going to be fighting with Black Panther as a type of special unit. But what's interesting is Shuri is retraining his mind, because if people are not familiar with the character, his mind has been poisoned. He has certain things in his mind that you can say, which turns him into a killer, and he can't control it. So they are Africanizing White Wolf or Winter Soldier so that he can be a part of their society. So you can't just come into African society and think that you're going to come with all your misconceptions and stuff. No, you need to learn our way, and when you are done learning our way, you can come in. But you know, I always take the approach like Brother Aunt suggests with the Mossi. Don't let them in at all. But that's the road they're taking in the film.
Okay, the movie I was talking about earlier is called The Curse of the Golden Flower. Have y'all seen that film? It's a beautiful martial arts film. Came out in 2006, and it's about how this one king, one of his sons, was trying to force his way into the kingship, and they have a tradition, like with the African traditions, that everything will be done in its proper time, and you can't force, you know, ancestral time, you know, because it always end up being a bad outcome. And so this is exactly what we see in The Curse of the Golden Flower. I recommend everyone see that film. And matter of fact, we should do a show comparing Black Panther to Curse of the Golden Flower. And in terms of its themes, I think you'll find a lot of things that are similar, but ultimately I think it'll give a perspective on when you try to force things that are naturally already going along that path, but just its own way. And so you got to, as I said, Killmonger has a European mindset. So remember, Europeans came into Africa thinking that the Black folks were backwards, and that it was their job to come in and civilize them and give them technologies and bring them into the modern age, so to speak. When on their own, if they chose to go along that route, they more than likely would. And so it is the forcing of one's ideology on another people that causes the dissension and the issues that we find in the world today. But no one seems to be thinking of this in terms of these in these type of terms. And so it looks like brother went out, so hopefully he'll come back in. We're still live. It looks like we're live.
Yep, it still looks like we're live, so hopefully we'll stay on.
So
yeah, we live.
Just drops out. Yeah.
Now, sorry, I wanted to ask you a question. So one of the things that I got the sense of when I was watching the movie, go on mute.
Let me see the piece.
Go on mute. So, okay.
What?
You go on mute.
Because your background.
Black Bookstore Cultural Center. I'm a raw squad up.
Right. So I wanted to ask, like in psychology, a lot of times we say, okay, you have to meet people where they are. And I found that Ryan did a great job of kind of capturing where Africans were at the time of kind of understanding what happened to us in slavery. So it's like he started where they were, because oftentimes I meet Africans and they don't know we're African, or they don't know about the entire the entire history of the Atlantic slave trade. And I felt in the movie he did a great job of capturing that, because they were stunned. Like, how can you, how can you leave your people there, yes, your family there, knowing all that they've been through? So does that go along with what you're saying about timing and in African culture? And
exactly.
Okay.
Because we got to think about it like this. Without the transatlantic slave trade, there would be no Pan-Africanism. Because the concept of an African is a diaspora conceptualization. Now, the European named the continent, but prior to Europeans in 1884 naming the continent and drawing the borders, the Africans had no concept of an African. It does not exist. They are about their people and their culture and their nation. And so that's what you see in the film. Without the slave trade, we can say the slave trade is the embodiment of Killmonger in many respects, but it took the slave trade for Africans to see their commonalities, but it took the diaspora, to put this together. So the first Pan-African conferences were developed by the diaspora. The first people to identify themselves as Africans is the diaspora. We named our church the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Our organizations was the African this, the Masonic Lodge. The first lodge was the African Lodge. We were the first ones to call ourselves Africans. They weren't Africans. We had to convince them that they were Africans. And so we had a sense of what it means to be Pan-African, because we understood our history from coming from all of these different areas of the continent, whereas they did not. And so even to this day, there's an article, a blog that I share about this Nigerian brother who talks about his grandmother not knowing that she's African, his living grandmother. And so even in the modern days, she's like, what is this African? They have no concept. There's no African word for a continent. That's a loan word into African languages. They have no conceptualization. They're not all big. This is why Cheikh Anta Diop wrote his book, which translates into English as Black Africa, the economic and cultural basis for a federated state. And in that, he tells us why he was doing the work that he was doing, because Africans did not understand the commonality they have across the continent. And so as a result, he was saying that we need to create a common singular African culture so that everyone can abide in this. And this is why I do the linguistics. This is why I do the Egyptology, to show that all of these people are related, to show Africans that we're related. And since you already are family, now this is the basis to create a United States of Africa. That was his whole mission, because Africans do not know that they're Africans. There's no concept of an African for an African. That is something that they're developing into. That is a diasporic conceptualization. And so it is understandable why a Wakanda in 1611, 1619, and even earlier in the 1400s, when it really started